I want you to picture the Earth, just, floating in space.
Right, which feels perfectly still to us.
Yeah, exactly. It feels perfectly still to you sitting right here listening to this. But our planet is actually hurtling through the void. It's rotating around the sun at roughly 30 kilometers every single second.
It is a massive, incredibly heavy object moving at a terrifying speed.
It really is.
And, the only reason it holds together is because that speed remains constant.
Right. It's the ultimate balancing act of physics,
Huh?
Gravity pulling inward, momentum pushing outward, locked in this predictable dance. But any physical structure, no matter how massive, has an absolute non-negotiable speed limit.
Definitely.
And if you disrupt that delicate balance, if you suddenly accelerate the Earth from 30 kilometers a second to 100, then 1,000, then 10,000 kilometers per second, the binding forces fundamentally fail.
The planet doesn't just experience higher winds.
No, the literal tectonic plates and atmospheric layers would shatter. It disintegrates because the physical structure simply cannot contain that velocity.
And that image, a massive structural entity accelerating until it violently rips itself apart. That is the foundational concept for the material we are doing a deep dive into today.
Yeah, today we are exploring a highly provocative, deeply radical essay from October 2023. It's by an author named Feng, titled "The Structure of Human Existence Will Lead to Human Extinction." And the English translation we're referencing was edited by Kinyu.
It is a heavy piece of work.
It really is. And before we get into the mechanisms of this theory, I need to set a clear ground rule for you. This text explores an incredibly critical, borderline extreme viewpoint of human civilization. It attacks the very bedrock of how we live.
For sure.
So, as your hosts, we are absolutely not endorsing these ideas, nor are we taking any political sides. Our mission here is simply to act as neutral guides, unpacking the architecture of a very complex, challenging argument.
We're basically dissecting the logic.
Yeah.
And the core premise Feng presents is that human society is currently functioning like a recursive algorithm that just lacks a termination clause. It doesn't merely move forward. It constantly rewrites its own code to demand more processing power, accelerating exponentially until it inevitably crashes the entire system.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if society is a recursive loop accelerating toward destruction, my immediate instinct is to look at the code for some kind of braking mechanism. Don't we have brakes built in?
You think so, right?
Yeah, we have international laws, complex social norms, treaties.
Well, Feng anticipates that exact counter-argument.
Yeah.
He acknowledges that humanity possesses things like religious doctrines, moral codes, and even major natural disasters.
But he doesn't count them as brakes.
No, he classifies these as temporary buffers, not functional brakes. Like a massive hurricane might pause economic acceleration in a specific region momentarily while they rebuild, or a strict religious doctrine might temporarily suppress certain localized behaviors.
Okay, I see.
But the underlying engine driving the overall acceleration is human desire. And he argues that desire is fundamentally limitless.
I was analyzing this section of the text, and it's fascinating how Feng maps out the psychology of the moving goalpost. He uses the progression of both power and wealth to illustrate this.
Yeah, the way he breaks it down is so methodical.
Right. If someone's initial goal is simply to be a department head, the moment they achieve that position, the psychological baseline just resets. That role is no longer enough.
The desire mutates.
Exactly. Now they need to be a governor, and then they need to be the president. And Feng takes this logic to its ultimate philosophical extreme, stating that human desire won't truly be satiated unless an individual could rule the entire universe as what he terms the greatest creator.
It's wild. And he does the exact same thing with wealth, too.
Oh, yeah, the money aspect is staggering.
He points out that, $10,000 isn't enough, so then it's $100,000.
Then $1 million.
Right, then $100 million. The craving doesn't stop until one person literally possesses all the wealth in the world. And to illustrate how deeply embedded this is in our psyche, the author brings up the classic Russian fable, The Fisherman and the Goldfish.
Which is the perfect distillation of this concept. In the fable, you have this impoverished fisherman who catches a magical goldfish, right? And it offers a wish for its freedom.
Yeah, and his wife demands a new wooden trough.
But securing the trough doesn't satisfy her. It basically just unlocks the next tier of her ambition. She subsequently demands a new house.
Then the status of a wealthy noblewoman.
Then to be crowned queen.
And ultimately, she demands to rule the sea itself, with the magical goldfish serving as her personal attendant.
Right. And that fatal overreach collapses her reality, leaving her right back in poverty.
Exactly. The author leverages this fable to argue that this unending greed is not some, modern byproduct of capitalism or a recent cultural defect. He says it is a biological flaw inherent in human nature. Yeah. When you build a global society composed of billions of individuals operating on this limitlessly expanding desire, the collective system inherently lacks the capacity to slow down.
Which brings us directly to the hardware problem. If the software is this recursive loop of desire demanding infinite processing power, the physical hardware of the planet is what actually starts melting down.
It's a great way to frame it.
To use a biological metaphor, it's not just a financial debt we are accruing. Human desire is acting like a metabolic rate that has completely outpaced its host organism's ability to regenerate.
And Su Feng meticulously details that physical meltdown. He does so by outlining a cascading systemic failure. It begins with uncontrolled population growth running in parallel with the reckless exploitation of coal, oil, and minerals.
Because the extraction process has no natural endpoint, right? It's driven by a desire for energy and wealth that also has no natural endpoint.
Exactly. And that two-front assault creates a vicious feedback loop. On one end, humanity is aggressively stripping out the foundational ecosystems, rapidly diminishing the forests, the grasslands, and the wetlands.
Just clearing it all out.
Right. And then on the other end, the byproduct of our modern lifestyle is pumping massive amounts of toxic waste into the air, the soil, and our critical water sources.
So we are suffocating the planet's ability to heal while actively poisoning it at the same time.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the consequence of this is what throws the entire biosphere out of balance. Shifeng argues this disrupted food chain and polluted habitat directly catalyzed the extreme weather we're seeing globally.
The global warming, the glacier melting, it's all connected.
Yeah, those aren't random isolated events. They are the literal friction of a physical machine shaking apart. This manifests as the increased hurricanes, heavy rainfall, massive floods, frequent droughts, and devastating forest fires outlined in the text.
Even the extreme high temperatures. But here is the critical pivot the essay makes. Shifeng argues these environmental disasters, the floods, the fires, the heat, they are merely symptoms.
Just the visible smoke.
Right, the actual fire causing the destruction is structural. To stop this recursive loop, the author completely bypasses the obvious targets, he doesn't blame massive corporations or specific governments. Instead, he targets the first core pillar of human existence, which he identifies as the traditional family structure.
It is easily the most radical argument in the entire essay.
Oh, absolutely. And it is where I find myself pushing back the hardest on the text. Because, evolutionary biology suggests we are literally hardwired to protect our kin. The family unit is how mammalian species survive.
Right, it's pretty fundamental.
So by framing the traditional family as the villain of this story, the author isn't just asking us to alter a social policy. He is demanding we overwrite millions of years of evolutionary DNA. Does he actually present a logical case for why this is necessary, or even feasible?
Well, he builds a very specific logical case by challenging who it is we're actually protecting. Su Feng posits that the traditional family structure is the original, localized birthplace of human selfishness.
Okay, how so?
He acknowledges that, yes, we sacrifice immensely for our children and our aging parents, but that selflessness is hyper-exclusive. It is almost always performed to the detriment of the broader community or the natural world.
Oh, I see the mechanism he's outlining. It's the justification for hoarding.
Exactly.
The idea that a CEO might exploit a natural resource or an individual might commit a severe social crime, and internally they justify that destruction because they are securing a massive inheritance or immediate safety for their own specific genetic line.
Right. It weaponizes our deepest biological bonds.
Yeah.
To return to your biological metaphor from earlier, the family unit acts like a highly specialized cell that aggressively absorbs nutrients solely for itself, effectively starving the rest of the organism.
That makes a lot of sense.
The essay argues that people will endlessly accumulate excessive wealth, specifically to benefit their own family unit. Su Feng claims that if the traditional family structure dissolves, the primary motivation for accumulating that private wealth naturally evaporates.
But, declaring dissolve the family is entirely theoretical unless you can explain how the replacement system actually functions.
Sure.
How do you run a society without the nuclear family? How are children raised?
Yeah.
How is elder care managed? If the author doesn't explain the mechanics of a post-family society, it's really just utopian fiction.
Well, Swifting actually points to a specific proof of concept to validate his theory. He cites the second home model, which was established by a community known as Lifechanyuan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, according to the text, this community model provides ample, tested evidence that dismantling the family structure successfully eases societal and natural tensions.
Okay, let's examine the actual mechanics of that second home model. What does that look like on a practical, day-to-day basis?
So in this model, the traditional nuclear family is entirely replaced by a larger communal living arrangement. The institution of marriage, which Swifeng implies, acts as an exclusive contract of ownership over another person, is dissolved.
Wow.
Yeah. But the most critical mechanical shift is how dependents are managed. The raising of children and the care of the elderly are completely collectivized.
So instead of two exhausted parents working multiple jobs to provide resources, healthcare, and education for their specific biological child, the entire community pools its resources and labor to raise all the children collectively.
Exactly. And the elderly are cared for by the community at large, removing the immense, localized financial and emotional burden from their adult children.
It's a massive shift.
It is. Think about the resource duplication in a traditional neighborhood. Every single nuclear family buys their own lawnmower, their own washing machine, their own cars. It creates massive material redundancy.
Yeah, for sure.
By collectivizing life responsibilities and resources, the individual's need to hoard private wealth just plummets. I mean, why stockpile millions of dollars for your child's education or your own retirement if the community structure guarantees those needs are universally met?
That is a fascinating mechanism. The argument is that once you remove the localized anxieties of the family unit, the selfish, hoarding behaviors required to survive those anxieties disappear right along with them.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that once you accept that premise at the micro level, the author immediately scales that exact same logic up to the macro level.
How does he do that?
Because what happens when those localized individuals look outward and realize their entire country is behaving like a giant selfish family on the global stage?
Ah, that leads us to Sokofeng's second pillar of human extinction, the nation state.
Right? The author views nations as nothing more than macro-level machines designed explicitly for humans to vie for resources and mutually destroy one another.
Just playing out the family dynamic on a bigger map.
Precisely. Just as a family hoards for its members, a nation hoards for its citizens, completely disregarding the well-being of the rest of humanity and the planet itself.
And the mathematical toll of that macro hoarding is just staggering. Let's look at the global military burden outlined in the essay.
The numbers are pretty shocking.
They really are. If you take the total global military spending and divide it by the world's 8 billion people, it equates to an annual subscription fee of over $300 per person.
Wow.
Right. Every single human being on Earth is effectively paying a massive mandatory tax just to fund machines designed for mutual destruction.
So for a family of 4, that is over $1,200 a year of raw human effort diverted away from human livelihood.
Exactly.
And it's not just the financial costs. It is the raw materials, the steel, the silicon, the fuel, and the incredible human genius of engineers being diverted into building missiles instead of green technology or medical advancements.
It's such a massive waste of potential.
But the military is only the external weapon of the nation-state. The internal mechanism of waste is what Shuofeng identifies as the bureaucratic burden.
And the essay uses China as a specific mathematical example to illustrate this internal burden. And rather than getting bogged down in just the basic division, the core philosophical point Shuofeng makes here is incredibly sharp.
Yeah, he breaks it down very clearly.
He looks at China's population of 1.4 billion people and notes that approximately 80 million of them are financially supported directly by state tax revenue.
Right. And when you filter out the populations that do not generate substantial taxable income, children, the elderly, the unemployed, individuals with disabilities, and subsistence farmers, you are left with a surprisingly small core of people who are actively creating material wealth.
Because initially you look at the working age population.
Exactly, which is globally 15 to 64.
Yeah.
Or in China, 16 to 60 for men and 16 to 54 for women. And on paper, it looks like it takes about 12 working age individuals to support one government worker.
But that's not the reality.
No, because of all those non-taxable groups we just mentioned. Shuofeng estimates that realistically it takes 5 to 6 individuals creating material wealth to financially support a single government worker.
So what does this all mean? The profound insight here isn't just the ratio itself, it is the fixed, permanent nature of that bureaucratic class.
Right, it never shrinks.
A nation-state inherently requires a massive management class that produces zero material wealth. Regardless of whether an entrepreneur or a manufacturer has a highly profitable year or a devastating loss, the salaries and pensions of those government officials are obligatory.
They have to be paid.
It acts as an immense, invisible, and permanent tax on human innovation and labor.
Because anyone who consumes anything in that society pays taxes indirectly, meaning wealth is constantly siphoned upward from the creators simply to maintain the existence of the national management structure.
It's just a constant drain.
And Hu Feng's conclusion is absolute. He says the nation-state is an intolerable, incredibly inefficient burden. He states that if all nations on Earth were to disappear, humanity could redirect an unfathomable amount of wasted energy and resources into leading relatively tranquil, prosperous lives.
It is a total structural demolition. I mean, Swissing is arguing that our ancient safety blankets, the family unit that raises us, and the nation-state that protects us are actually the very things smothering us.
That's his core thesis, yeah.
To summarize his ultimate conclusion, staying on our traditional path, gripping tightly to our families and our borders, guarantees we act as that accelerating mass. We're destined to structurally disintegrate from the velocity of our own greed.
But if humanity is willing to do the unthinkable, if we disband the family unit and dissolve the nation-state entirely, he believes we can eliminate the underlying structural incentives for selfishness.
We basically remove the engine of the train.
Exactly. We can transition away from impending crisis and embark on a road to global tranquility.
Which leaves you with a massive, lingering question to explore on your own after we sign off today. Think about the scale of what is being proposed here.
It's immense.
If the very structures of family and nation are exactly what allowed humanity to coordinate, build global civilizations, and develop advanced science in the first place, is it even possible to suddenly discard them without losing the essence of what makes us human?
Or, conversely, is letting go of those ancient safety blankets the exact painful evolutionary leap that is required for us to survive the blinding speed of our own technological and environmental capability?
That is the thought we will leave you with today. Are we structurally bound to ride this algorithm until the hardware crashes, or are we capable of writing a completely new code for human existence? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.